Okay, so I'm just gonna focus more on the last projects, like the last 2 years projects. Maybe I'm bored of the old projects. I don't know. Maybe I have to come back. So maybe I'm still like looking what I did the last 2 years because it was quite intensive, and I'm still kind of trying to reflect on it. And meanwhile, I do a PhD in practice in Vienna. So this is also important for me. How do I look the last 2 years while still trying to study and search something, and meanwhile doing, work which is already in exhibition making, and it's already exhibited and written about it, and it's already there, So that's why I'm kind of trying to focus on this. Yeah. The starting from exhibition view, I see a face. Do you see a face in Mumok? I was part of I won the prize Henkel Award, and part of it was to have a solo show in Mumok. I arrived there and they told me this is the lowest ceiling in the museum. So they kind of felt sorry for it in one way, but in another way they just wanted to notice me that, okay, I should kind of choose small objects or things which kind of respect that space, level. So I have a lot of collaboration with architects, and I knew that, okay, sometimes you can switch and make the opposite, like you can make the space bigger by bringing a bigger object inside the space. So, because that's the only moment that you really realize what's the height of the ceiling, what's the height of the space, that physically you have a different relation to the space. So, this case, I was somehow having on my kind of puzzle way of working with these columns from United Nations of Kosovo, which were very present in after the war in the headquarters of the building. And so I decided to bring them in the same height of the ceiling and put them upside down. They are untitled. When something is untitled, it's very random because I'm really into titles, and titles are really important. So when I decide that something is not going to get any title, then it's something that has to create its own opacity. It has to have some own opaque in a way of reading it. So in relation to it, this one I go with, right? Yeah. So the columns, the barriers created kind of relation in the space juxtaposed to the work. I see a face. Do you see a face? Which is the clouds, and it's faces drawn by a computer in the face of the cloud. This is another work which kind of relates to the misunderstanding, and also in the way like kind of looking at this emergent moment when you want to share with the other person who is next to you, and you're like, do you see what I see, or do you think what I'm thinking? And it's always this disappointment and this impossibility of possibility of trying to catch the same moment, So I see a face has 10 different series, and in one way trying to share the center. It's not really, when we are in a computer time of living and having this relation to sharing as caring with this, it's in this case I see sharing and caring more in the sense of like I'm sharing my perspective, I'm sharing my point of view, and I hope you're like kind of looking at the same point of view as I'm looking at this is happening in Instagram or Facebook or other media, So then in opposed to it is this is really loud. We are in the street, right?
They left.
And so opposite to it is the work. I miss you until I don't miss you anymore. And this work, it's based in 3-channel installation. Now I see what you mean with the slides. It's crazy.
But
okay, now it's better. Oh my God, I was suffering.
Because we are missing then your face.
I see, okay. That's good.
We don't see your face.
We want to see you too. Is this better?
Is it spooky how I look like?
You look
No?
beautiful.
Okay, good. So I miss you till I don't miss you anymore. Creates a kind of another horizon towards the space. And it has this relation towards the trying to emphasize how love letters in distance relationship with email exchange kind of build up their own 3-stage of starting I miss you, starting the beginning of relation and getting a little bit more passionable, like the I miss you, it's not that careful anymore, it's like I miss your body, I miss you to be here next to me, touch you, and that, and then it comes the third screen, which is like kind of emphasizing the fallout of the love letters, not because there is a certain point or certain reason, but just because the distance relation doesn't really work, you know. The distance relation, sometimes it is ending because it is just a distance, not more, not less, you know. And that's the edition what was made for Momok shop. And yeah, it's like 3 stages, and it says, I tried to send you a message on your phone last night. Read, I picked a star from the sky for you. Here it is, playing, in your hands, good night kiss. But it did not get through, sending failed. Please come here, I'm fed up of waiting. I don't understand, I miss you so much. I think you are special, and this is not because I like your face or your body, for sure I do. Haven't heard from you in eternity. Sure, I miss you. What did you expect? What's this? No voice from you? What's up? Gosh, throw a pillow or say something, even sarcastic. And then the exhibition traveled to Pristina National Gallery. And at the time, Erzen Skololi was the director, was curated by Markus Miesen, who used to be my professor in Städelschule, where I studied previously before. And the columns suddenly got a really different role. It was like, okay, there is this United Nations, it's this moment that the buildings has a different relation to something is supporting. You know, it's not only anymore like stretching or holding the building, but it's like really like we are here a structure to support this country, you know.
But maybe, I don't know if people got it, these are the pieces of cement that in the United Nations they put to block the entrance, or not? I mean,
To
protect the building. Yeah.
So the headquarters of United Nations.
So what you call the column is basically,
I'm calling a column
real
because I'm trying to kind of make some distance to the agency of the aesthetic, like the aesthetical regime they embody in themselves. So, and because they are supposed to create a different functionality on the space, in this case, it was different reading. Like in Momok, the people who came there were a few people who really even missed that they were present, you know, even if they were the biggest object inside the space. And here nobody could kind of ignore the presence of that, which is the same relation to United Nations present and EULEX today. They are fake, actually. They are not real concrete. They are made out of wood. And Brillux, which is called concrete optic look, which is like, even by itself, it says that it's faking the concrete look, you know. And this was recently in Salzburg Kunstverein, that they lean, and it's also interesting how they create a different kind of, aesthetical relation when there is a wood, when it's something interior and exterior coming together. And then this is what?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So this is an image. When you look to this image, if you ever visited Pristina, or coming from airport, you will realize this. Now they painted white, right? This blue.
No, it's different.
It's not
graffiti.
Okay, it's different. That's interesting. I'm curious. So basically, you see this image, and you think of the question: not what does image do, but what does image want. So by doing it, you kind of create a subaltern relation to trying to weakness the image, trying to weakness the potentiality, what the image in relation to the past, present, and the future can create. And try, especially in this case, there is a horizon, you know, and there is this military construction around it. And one would see this as a waterfall or something like the sea, and some people say, no, it's like the mountain. And anyhow, for me, it was a starting point to think of Kosovo Pavilion when I had to make my proposal for it. Because it's in many levels, it reflects the relation of Kosovo in the, like having the EU very present there, meanwhile being the most isolated country in relation to Schengen, and meanwhile still a kind of creating this construction of identity which is imposed from international missions in a peace-building mission in Kosovo. So that image is deconstructed on this image. I don't know how many of you had the chance to see it in the last Venice Biennale. So based on my last show, which you saw in Mumok and the National Gallery in Kosovo, then it's like kind of continuation, how far you can question what does image want, you know. And maybe this image want to like kind of strip down the columns, create this like a sand, which could be a relation to concrete, and unlimited walls, which also could be, which is the biggest struggle of Kosovo, being super isolated country. In the title of the show was Speculating on the Blue. So while speculating on the blue also changed two times, not really telling to people when that time changed of colors, but the colors of the light changed, and from the bright light you have seen, it turns into yellow, and then it goes into orange, and it becomes red. What is interesting is that the blue sand becomes green in a moment of when the yellow light enters. So it's not anymore. Somebody who would enter the space in that moment would not know what color they're stepping on, you know. And the red color, the blue sand became completely black, and then would be coming closer to the purple. You would have this like kind of highly aesthetical, good-looking work. And then, which was the highest point of the light situation, when the blue light enters inside the pavilion, the walls, the sand, the ground was disappeared. You would only have this skeleton of the barriers, which is actually made out of this metal, rubber, how do you call that? Armature. Iron, yeah. So the skeleton, it's basically the main support for the barrier. And in this case, that's a moment when the skeleton is just floating around the space, and you have no limits. So this like kind of the limits of the pavilion had disappeared, you know, especially in this relation when speculating on the blue, which was so important for me, thinking about how isolated is this country, you know. So in this moment, I was really content with the, you know, aesthetical approach. But meanwhile, there was the sand again coming back, and the sand was spreading around the other pavilions, which was another kind of deterritorialization of the territory of the pavilion, like kind of trying to question this territory next to territory, and there is like this border still happening in national pavilions, you know. So then I got a commission work for political populism in Kunsthalle Wien. And somehow me and Nicolas working together in the pavilion, we tried to think how can we kind of continue this this work in another level, like kind of go on. So I was already working on these figures in they were usually how I work is like something is there in my shop, and then I kind of work on it and it comes back, and then I use it in the right time, right moment, and kind of finish it for a right exhibition. So I had these figures of the kids, which were again made out of the same metal. But then I had this IKEA bag that adds the blue sand inside. Why I went to the end? Oh my God, what am I? Okay, here, good. This is like thinking of, I got these images out of the tea towel, which was made I received that from my sister, who her son was attending in an international school in Abidjan in Africa. And she sent it to me that because their class had the drawings of their own portraits. And she knows I'm okay into the drawings and stuff, so she bought one for me. I looked at that tea towel a lot, and then I realized one day I'm just kind of get into that because it was a lot of drawings which had a lot of, you would not really imagine that source dislocates the what's that? Okay. Yeah. Dislocate where the source is coming. You would not believe there is like kind of this Kosovo kid being in United Nations mission family in Africa, in the United Nations job. So I took that as a kind of good reference, which could displace territories and reference when we are so eager to know where it's coming from, like kind of trying to define the information. And IKEA, it's very interesting for me since I moved to Frankfurt a few years ago. IKEA it's a brand what it could always be used from, every student can afford it. It's like a level what creates a hegemonist kind of aesthetic of common home of a European Union. Everybody could be able to afford IKEA, but meanwhile IKEA doesn't really go to the countries which has an economical crisis. IKEA is not in Kosovo, is it in Serbia later? Yes? So
it's in Greece.
In Greece, yes. So it starts slowly, but meanwhile, if you are from Kosovo, want to get IKEA, you would order and you would wait for your track in Macedonia. You would have some kind of special way to kind of reach that brand. So thinking of IKEA like a kind of a standard for all, as you and this democracy for all. So this was like a starting point to think, how can IKEA as a brand create this desire of European Union, like thinking of refugees, thinking of trying to immigrate into a certain standard, what would give you a home of IKEA standard? Like kind of a starting point. And when I look at my friends who trying to skip themselves or make some distance from IKEA, because everybody has IKEA house, they just don't want to be like part of it. So they go and buy basics to IKEA, but when it comes to the designing their house, then it's not anymore IKEA. They try to go in another standard. So it's like IKEA is like a more middle class standard in a way. And so the blue sand became a part of that kind of creating again relation to horizon and something that you possess, but at the meantime you could also look, something that it waits. So these drawings were translated in Basel in Biersfeld in exhibition My Gravity Slipped Away, which happened this year in June. April. Right. And So I decided to create this, to go on with these drawings, which they get another shape, and they have this glass from antique. It's called antique glass. Usually, it's used for churches and cathedrals where you can paint on it and color it. So those glasses as a panels have got the drawings on it, and yeah, different colors. But what was more important was for me this Photoshop crop file. So someone who uses Photoshop knows that Photoshop, in a moment you kind of see the image cropped, as there is no materiality, there is no kind of physicality of the picture, means there is no pixelation in it. Then this drawing is empty, but in the meantime is showing this image of quadrats. So it's an image that the proposition is there is no image, you know. In a weird way, made me a relation by also experiencing no man's land in the time of the war in Kosovo, and having this relation to being a refugee for a few days in Plaza. I was thinking a lot, how can this territory have no sovereignty? A territory that has no territory because there is no sovereignty. What's the relation to the body agency on a territory? Are you more safe or are you less safe in that kind of relation, you know?
And how big were the glasses?
Different scale, like they could be like almost 1.5 or something, 60, and yeah. You could also still have some space to go, but it was super fragile. So in one way, like it weights the body agency inside. If you really decide to walk through and feel comfortable walking through these glasses, the cats did it.
The cats?
Yes. So the space really cut it as like a space in the space. It's a kind of a crop in the space, as there is no territory and there is no gravity. Some more details. So this was a tea towel I received from the International Community School of Abidjan. And do you see my miles? Yes. That's my nephew. Whoa. So I kind of want to end to this work because it's like kind of completely different from the others. After MUMOC, I realized I got a lot of, after Venice Pavilion especially, I got a lot of invitation, and then the speed of work and requests got higher and higher. So at that moment I was a bit like, okay, how do I handle this, you know? It's like, and because we live now in a different age of distribution of media through internet, of course, your last exhibition had 20 pictures, details and stuff. So it was not only distributed through a catalog or something like, you know, but it had a lot of like details that people would feel like, I have seen your show, I have seen your work, you know. And I met a lot of people or institutions or spaces who requested from me a new artwork, a new, like, we want to make a show with you, but we wish you would be willing to do something new. And we have a very symbolic budget, so would you be able to use it? Use it in smart. Very, yeah, you know, and then you're like, shall I or shall I not? Or, you know, so you kind of have this situation. So I invented this guy. Is it you, Joe? So Joe became my kind of alter ego of my counterpart in artistic production. So Joe was my joker, Joe was my robot, Joe was everything what I couldn't reach on time and space to be there, you know. So Joe responded to the system, but in the meantime Joe responded to the market. When I couldn't do any compromise, Joe did it for me, right? So Joe became a kind of vehicle of surviving in one way, you know. How me as a, woman artists react to this kind of speak, how smart I can be to like kind of fit to the market or not, or do I want that, you know? So when it's something dirty, let Joe do that. I'm not going to do it, you know? So Joe created the compromises which would kind of be in a way
If you were
like a
getting
joke.
all the exciting part and let him just deal with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Or Joe was more funny than me. So this is Joe from Lister Art Fair, so the whole booth was about Joe. Joe is able to camouflage itself. You know, Joe can fit to the most materialized, most interesting materials, fashionable, which are in a market or in a kind of request. So marble came back in a way, appreciated as a material again. So here is a Joe as a snake of Tetris, which is like a 3D print, but then Joe becomes a sponge there that is trying to again emerge into the patterns, and yeah, goes on. Joe, is it you, Joe? I came from the future and I ended up in Munich. It was for Art Museum in Munich, made as Joe having a beer. And these are more like mixed materials. It's important for Joe to never be repeated. If Joe repeats the shape, it never repeats the same color or materials, trying to kind of create a feeling that Joe is unique and it's made to respond to unique request, you know, in a way. So yeah, that's, I have to say, like kind of, Joe here is a liar, so Joe trying to hide his hand in behind the, you know, this lie you do it, like, you know, but meanwhile, like when you do this, of course you can hide it, but Joe cannot do it because he has like silhouette, you know, shape. Meanwhile, Joe was silly enough to put the hand in the wrong color, which is white or green screen, and the color is also like kind of dropping in the space. It's all part of it. Right. So I will close it here. Was it more than 30 minutes? Was it?
That's nice to close it.
Was it Joe or you?
Yeah, that's what I like about Joe. People start joking immediately about Joe. You see, they get the joke.
You turn on the light.
Oh, where is Joe now?
Yeah,
Yes.
good question.
Actually, Thea, our coordinator, was writing to you and said that Flaka's assistant was answering. Was it Joe or was your assistant?
It's nice. Joe is more than an assistant, actually.
He's an author.
Everything.
Okay.
It's just faster. He manages better.
Is Joe contemporary?
That's what he's trying to. Do you want to sit here that you have more questions? Excuse me?
Is Joe the more than his creator?
Yeah, that's what I wonder one day, because Joe is an unlimited series, always has to appear in different shape and colors, as I said. It's an endless joke. Joe want to play with me and I want to play with Joe. So you never know. One day he will master me, maybe.
Okay. And then we will miss you.
It's like Joe again, a man. Made it.
More questions? Okay.
Do I understand? You write that in a way that interest in your work created a context for your work.
Again?
The growing interest in your work, which was prompted by the fact that you did the pavilion and then you had a couple of exhibitions, was this somehow creating an interesting context to which to respond and
Yeah.
from which to speak?
I always did that. I mean, in many of my works, I always try to kind of I thought how, because I don't believe on originality anymore. Like, how can you be original in a sense? So I'm like more like, how can you be honest? What's your condition of working and thinking that you can respond to it? So I always, that can change a lot from a 10 years ago when I responded with my balls, like a performance, or how that moves to a pavilion or to a Joe. That's all like kind of condition of historical condition, what surrounds me, and I try to respond as much as honest as possible, and of course in a creative way. So what can generate, it can always surprise me as well, 2 years ago I would not even imagine there would come Joe as a...
Yesterday in Tirana, we saw among other artists who were in Peter Kogler's video. On the screen there was a rather serious John Baldassari, who was pretty much, explaining and at the same time concealing his motivations and his strategies. And I wonder, would that be a kind of procedure to which you are indebted as an artist?
I haven't seen the video. I missed it.
It doesn't matter, you know who John Baldassari is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I know.
It's interesting. I'm just wondering about your use of color and material, like a very simple question. Because it's a very seductive way of using colors and materials.
That was also one way of trying to kind of escape from the last, maybe thinking, okay, I'm a new generation of artists coming from Balkan or Kosovo, so how these aesthetics can change in relation or distinction themselves into something that in the past maybe was more bloody or more dark or something that people could relate differently to that aesthetic. So I studied in Städelschule, I studied in Pristina, and now I'm studying in Vienna. So one way I'm really into colors, yes, I can't help that. The other way is that I try to create an aesthetic that displays the origin of the work, of the artist, where it's coming from. That you're not coming in Kosovo Pavilion, if you don't read it, you don't necessarily think that's an Eastern European artist or Middle East or whatever, like kind of creating, trying to escape this cliche of creating certain distance of displacing and dislocating the source.
So how do you think something like contact art collection?
Again?
The contact art collection.
Like
Erste.
Yeah.
Do you think that your work is kind of palatable for this collection?
I never got any feedback why they really choose to buy my work.
They
so
did?
No. They bought my work, yeah. Kettenreaktion.
That was like 5 years ago, no?
Yeah,
because there is a certain type of formatting of what you termed art from Eastern Europe, which kind of allows it to rest in its comfortable box of misery and heroic past and
exactly. So you agree with that?
Difficult present.
You agree with this cliche, right?
I agree with the diagnosis. I'm not sure if I agree fully or if I understand well your strategy. Because I think the erasing of the difference, maybe it's a necessary gesture, but the question is like, what comes next? Like what kind of identity or what kind of, disidentity comes instead?
For me, it's important that the identity is less exoticized. And that's what I don't want to be exoticized in a point where the work is seen and, kind of framed and looking from perspective. So, that's one thing. And being in Kosovo, thinking about, there are these old NGOs, they are all present, they are all like there. The EU is present in Kosovo, but Kosovo is the most isolated country in relation to EU. So,
and IKEA is present?
No. So IKEA is a desire of the West in the sense, like, if you get IKEA, it's like getting an EU step,
But that's after NATO.
Yeah. And of course, after 90s, since when IKEA exists?
IKEA is
It's all.
before, but yeah. In Kosovo, I don't know how it was before. We didn't know here in Albania that IKEA existed. We
But in
discovered it
the
later.
Balkan region, it started to be in Slovenia. And Slovenia is part of EU, and now it's in Croatia. So I don't think ever would land easy soon in Kosovo, you know, which I kind of like it, because I'm not so sure if I really like that IKEA arrives in Kosovo. It's same like if H&M arrives in Kosovo, you know, like creating this brand, the standard for all, in the sense of, I like when I go to different people in houses in Kosovo. They all have different kind of design of their house based on their relation to grandma, parents, how old is the house and how new. But when I was in Frankfurt, or you know, it was always like seeing the same house, same kind of design, and this was all because everybody could afford IKEA. Everybody could just like.
But are you going like to use Joe a lot, or just like
A lot.
So I mean, I'm curious to know about this relation between you when you think. I mean, it's not about just authorship. It's about, you know, having this kind of responsibility. When you showed us the work that you did in Kosovo, I mean, in the pavilion, in Kosovo in Venice. Of course, we understand that it was a thoughtful project, and you kind of analyzed the thing, and then you found the display and all this question of the color disappearing in the space, appearing, disappearing, and so it had an analytic aspect of it, you know. Of course, connected also with the context there, and of course, in the last images that we saw, it seems that you are a bit more joyful. And a bit more relaxed, and a bit more like I'm there, I'm not there, you know. And
but I find Joe very political, actually. Like, kind of, Joe has its own self-critical commodity, playing with the system and responding to it, and trying to kind of see how far that can go, you know.
So he's like a cowboy.
Cowboy, a joker, a robot. Everything what we need today.
Very far, actually. Joker.
Let's see. I mean,
I know
Joe has a future.
You like him already. Now.
That's what I hate. People really like Joe immediately.
Joe Norris.
I has a lot of sympathy. Maybe in the future. I don't know how much of Joe I'm gonna use, but Joe always have to make sense when it's used for. And that's more or less how I try to create a kind of respond to historical condition I'm like placed to function as an artist. And when even respond maybe more with humor or less, but somehow try to be honest to the situation I'm kind of find myself in.
You know, it reminds me, I just came today from Italy, and I was in the Fondazione Pistoletto, and actually here is a group of students or participants in the workshop that we started there, and we will continue here. And talking to Michelangelo Pistoletto, he was mentioning this moment in his career that, you know, he discovered the mirror, and then everybody was asking him to make the mirror, to continue to make mirrors, and he said, no, I'm not making any more mirrors. So he invented the new process he called oggetto in meno, so object less, or what, less. Missing, not missing.
The missing object? Or?
Yeah, like minus. How?
Minus.
Minus. Yeah. So, and just doing different kind of things, totally different one people were expecting from him. So I think it's always this kind of strategy that the artists somehow use to escape these cliches, you know, that we talked about exotism, but also in terms of style, you know, somehow they categorize you or label you in a position that you want.
I mean, it happened a very long time because of my work, my balls, what maybe a few people know here. I was very often replaced only in a feminist exhibitions, you know. And this was for me a little bit like, okay, I got it, but I can do more. It's just like it can go further. So this is one thing. So that's where I'm always trying to unbox, like the box I'm placed to. How can I always like kind of make my box bigger and bigger and bigger, trying to unfold it.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for coming, being so numerous.